I was working the front desk at a boutique hotel in Bath when an American guest asked me, completely seriously, if our quite good breakfast meant it was mediocre. She'd read it in our brochure. I'd written that brochure myself. I'd meant it was excellent. She looked genuinely concerned, like she'd booked into a 2-star by mistake. That's when I realized we had a communication problem that went way beyond accents. The thing about British English and American English is they're like two people wearing the same outfit to a party, look similar from a distance. Up close, nothing matches. We say quite good and mean fantastic. They hear quite good and think barely acceptable. Offer tea to be polite. They think we're running a cafe. We say, I'll bear that in mind, and mean absolutely not. They think we're considering it. I've worked in hospitality across London, Edinburgh, and the Cotswolds. For 8 years now, I've seen Americans try to tip everyone, including the bus driver. I've watched them ask where the castle's elevator is. I've heard them complain that our large coffee is too small. But the real chaos, that happens when British understatement meets American directness, when our irony slams into their sincerity, when we say one thing, mean another, and they take everything at face value. There was this guy in Manchester, software engineer, maybe 30, asked a local for directions to the Northern Quarter. The local said, "Oh, you can't miss it." Classic British phrase means it's obvious. The American spent 40 minutes walking in circles because he thought the local meant it was literally impossible to miss. Like some giant landmark, he finally asked someone else who said, "It's 2 streets that way." He was furious, not at himself. At the first, local for giving completely useless directions, or the woman at a London pub who asked the bartender if the fish and chips were good. He said, "They're not bad." She ordered a salad instead. The regular next to her was eating the fish and chips. She asked him how they were. He said, "Brilliant. Best in the area." She stared at the bartender like he'd committed fraud. He'd been recommending them. Not. Bad in British means really good. She'd translated it as barely edible. My favorite was the family in York. Dad asked a museum volunteer if the Roman exhibit was worth seeing. The volunteer said, "Some people quite like it." The dad thanked him and walked straight past it to the Viking section. The Roman exhibit had just won a national award. The IFE volunteer had been saying it was excellent. The dad later complained to management that the staff weren't helpful. The volunteer was genuinely confused. He thought he'd given a glowing recommendation, but that was just the beginning. The breakfast situation at the Bath Hotel escalated over 3 days. Let me set the scene properly. We're a Georgian townhouse, 15 rooms, trying to be upscale without being pretentious. Our breakfast is honestly excellent. Local eggs, proper bacon, homemade preserves. The brochure said quite good, because in Britain, that's high praise. Understated. Classy. This guest, Linda, maybe 55, from Arizona, kept asking weird questions. First morning, "Is the coffee drinkable?" I said, "It's not terrible." She ordered tea instead, looking disappointed. "Our coffee is from a specialty roaster in Bristol. Costs us a fortune." Not terrible meant it's fantastic. She heard, "It's bad, but not the worst." Second morning, "Are the eggs fresh?" I said, "They're all right." She had cereal. "The eggs come from a farm 3 miles away. Delivered at dawn." All right is British for exceptional. She heard, "Mediocre at best." I watched her eat cornflakes while other guests raved about the full English. Third morning, she finally asked directly, "Why does your brochure say the breakfast is only quite good if you're charging these prices?" My colleague Emma, who's more blunt than me, said, "Because we're British and we don't show off." Linda just stared. Then Emma added, "The breakfast is brilliant. Quite good means it's brilliant. We don't do superlatives." Linda ate the full English that morning. Afterward, she said it was pretty good. Emma beamed like she'd won an award. I had to explain that in American. Pretty good actually means good. Emma looked devastated. She thought Linda had loved it. We were ships passing in the night, constantly mistranslating each other's praise into insults. I saw similar chaos at a restaurant in Edinburgh. American couple, early 30s, honeymoon maybe. They asked the waiter about the haggis. He said, "It's quite popular." They ordered chicken instead. The table next to them had haggis. The couple watched them eat it, looking jealous. Finally asked their waiter, "Is the haggis actually good?" He looked confused and said, "That's what I said." They thought "quite popular" meant some people order it. He'd meant it's our specialty. Everyone loves it. It's the best thing on the menu. The waiter tried to clarify, said, "It's really not bad at all." They heard that as damning with faint praise. In British, not bad at all means outstanding. They left thinking the restaurant didn't stand behind its own signature dish. Left a review later, saying the staff seemed ashamed of their Scottish cuisine. The owner was baffled. His staff were proud of that haggis. They just communicated it in British. Here's where it gets deeper. A colleague of mine, James, works at a theater in Stratford-upon-Avon. American tourist asked if the evening's performance was good. James said, "It's quite decent. Standard." British praise. The tourist didn't buy tickets. Later called the box office to complain that staff were underselling the shows. James had been saying it was excellent, quite decent, is glowing in British. The tourist heard barely adequate. The theater started training staff to use American superlatives with American tourists. "It's amazing, incredible, best show ever." James said it felt like lying, like he was a used car salesman. But Americans bought more tickets. They needed the enthusiasm. The understated British praise sounded like warnings to them. My trader. Friend Sarah works at a bookshop in Cambridge. American student asked if a textbook was useful. Sarah said, "It's fairly helpful." The student bought a different one. That textbook was required reading for the course. Fairly helpful meant absolutely essential. But the student heard somewhat useful. Failed his first essay because he didn't have the right book. Came back angry, asking why Sarah didn't tell him he needed it. She insisted she had. They argued for 10 minutes before the owner intervened and explained British understatement. Student left looking betrayed by the English language itself. I transferred to a hotel in the Cotswolds last spring, picture postcard village. Thatched roofs, the works. We get a lot of Americans doing the classic England tour. One morning, a guest, Tom, maybe 40, tech industry vibe, came down for breakfast. It was absolutely pouring outside. Proper British rain. I said, "Lovely weather we're having." Classic British irony. It was miserable out. Tom looked at me, looked at the rain hammering the windows, and said, "Are you serious right now?" I smiled, thinking he got the joke. He didn't. He said, "This weather is terrible. Why would you call it lovely?" I explained it was irony. He said, "That's sarcasm." I said, "No, sarcasm is mean. Irony is just observational." He walked away, shaking his head, probably thinking British people can't tell the difference between sunshine and storms. Later, another guest asked how to get to a nearby village. I said, "Oh, it's just down the road." British irony again. It was 4 miles. Complicated route. Easy to get lost. She came back 2 hours later, exhausted, furious. Said I'd told her it was close. I had to explain that just down the road is what we say when something isn't close. She said, "Then why not say it's far?" I didn't have a good answer. It's just what we do. The irony problem exploded at a pub in Liverpool. I was visiting family. Stopped in for lunch. American couple sat next to me at the bar. The bartender, proper Scouser, was in peak form. Guy ordered fish and chips. Bartender said, "Brave choice." The American looked worried and changed his order to a burger. Brave choice meant the fish and chips were enormous. The yaoi bartender was joking that you'd need courage to finish them. The American heard it as a warning about food quality. Then, The couple asked about parking. Bartender said, "Traffic wardens here are lovely people, real sweethearts." Pure irony. The wardens in that area are notoriously strict. The Americans smiled and said the locals seemed nice. Came back 30 minutes later with a parking ticket, absolutely livid. The bartender was confused. He'd been warning them. They'd heard him complimenting the wardens. Here's the thing about British irony. It's our default setting. We're ironic about weather, traffic, work, government, everything. Americans hear it as lying. They think we're saying the opposite of what we mean on purpose to confuse them. But we're not trying to confuse anyone. We're just being British. My cousin works at a museum in Newcastle. American visitor asked if the industrial history exhibit was interesting. My cousin said, "Oh, it's absolutely riveting. You'll be on the edge of your seat." Full irony. The exhibit is genuinely boring. Just old machinery and text panels. The American spent 40 minutes in there, came out looking exhausted, found my cousin and said, "That was the dullest thing I've ever seen." "Why did you say it was riveting?" My cousin was mortified. She thought the irony was obvious. The American thought she'd been lied to. The museum added a training session on communicating with international visitors. Main lesson: say what you mean. No irony. No understatement. If something's boring, say it's boring. My cousin said it felt like losing part of her personality. The ironic commentary was how she coped with the boring parts of her job. Now she had to be sincere all the time. She lasted 3 months before requesting a transfer to the archive where she didn't talk to visitors. I met a tour guide in Oxford who'd completely given up on irony with American groups. She used to say things like, "The weather's absolutely glorious when it rained," or "We never get lost," when they'd taken a wrong turn. Classic British guide humor. Americans complained she was unprofessional and confusing. Now she scripts everything, literal and clear. She said the job's less fun, but the tips improved. That's the trade-off. You can be British or you can be understood, but apparently not both. The complexity deepens when you get into actual systems and expectations. I was covering a shift at a hotel near Heathrow last winter when an American businessman, maybe 50, checked in after a delayed flight. He was exhausted, polite but frazzled, asked if we had any rooms available for tonight. I said, "I'll see what I can do." British translation: "Your room is ready. I'm just confirming details." American translation: "Maybe, probably not. I'm doing you a favor by checking." He stood at the desk for 5 minutes, visibly stressed, while I processed his confirmed reservation. Finally said, "Is there a room or not?" I said, "Yes, of course." He exploded. "Then why did you say you'd see what you could do? I have a reservation." I tried explaining it was just a polite phrase. He said, "Politeness shouldn't sound like uncertainty." He had a point. Honestly, British customer service is designed to sound helpful even when we're just doing our jobs. We say, "I'll see what I can do," when we're already doing it. We say, "Let me check." That for you. When we know the answer, we say, "I'll try my best," when the outcome is guaranteed. It's padding, softening. Americans hear it as incompetence. The next morning, he asked about late checkout. I said, "That shouldn't be a problem." British for, "Yes, absolutely. You can have late checkout." American for, "Maybe, but probably yes." He checked out at normal time. Later, emailed saying he hadn't wanted to risk losing the room. I'd confirmed late checkout. He'd heard, "Possibly if circumstances allow. I've got a friend, Marcus, who works at a train station in Bristol." American tourist asked what time the next train to Bath was. Marcus said, "Should be about 10 minutes." The tourist waited. 20 minutes later, no train. Found Marcus. Furious, Marcus checked the board. Train was delayed. But here's the thing. He'd said, "should be," because British. People always hedge. We don't make definite statements. We say should, might, probably. The American heard will be and thought Marcus had given him wrong information. Marcus explained the train was delayed. The tourist said, "Then why didn't you say it might be delayed?" Marcus said, "That's what should be means." The tourist said, "No, should be means will be unless something weird happens." They argued linguistics for 5 minutes, while the delayed train announcement kept repeating in the background. The language barrier runs deeper than accents. A woman at a post office in Brighton asked if she could post a package to California. The clerk said, "I don't see why not." British for, "Yes, of course. We post things internationally." American for, "I guess so. Seems weird, but okay." The woman asked 3 more times, increasingly worried, if it was possible. The clerk kept saying variations of, "I suppose so. That should be fine. I can't imagine why it wouldn't work." All British affirmatives. The woman finally asked to speak to a manager. Manager said, "Yes, we can absolutely post that for you." Woman looked relieved, then angry that the first clerk had been so uncertain. Here's something Americans don't realize about British communication. We're allergic to definitives. We qualify everything. Sort of. Quite. Rather, fairly. Somewhat. We never just say, "Yes," when we can say, "I should think so." Americans find this maddening. They want clear answers. We give them probability clouds. My manager at the Bath Hotel was British-American. Moved here from Boston as a kid. She navigated both languages fluently. She'd translate for confused American guests. They'd ask her a question. She'd answer in American. Direct, clear, definite. Then she'd tell the British staff what she'd promised, and we'd all look at her like she'd sworn at a funeral. The certainty felt rude to us, but the Americans loved her. She got better reviews than any of us, because she gave straight answers. The most spectacular failure of British-American communication I ever witnessed happened at a rental car agency near Manchester Airport. I wasn't working there. I was picking up my sister, but I watched the whole thing unfold in the waiting area. American family, parents and 2 teenagers, picking up a car. The agent, proper Mancunian, was trying to explain the insurance options. Father asked if they needed the extra coverage. Agent said, "Well, you don't have to, but you might want to think about it." British for, "You should definitely get this." American for, "It's optional and probably unnecessary." Father declined. Agent said, "Right, well, it's your choice, but it can get quite expensive if something happens." British for, "Please reconsider. This is a bad idea." American for, "He's just doing his sales pitch." Father declined again. More firmly, agent tried one more time. "I wouldn't want to tell you what to do, but quite a few people find it useful." British for, "Everyone gets this. You're making a mistake." American for, "Some people waste money on it." Father, now annoyed, "If you thought we needed it, you should just say so." Agent, genuinely confused, "I have been saying so." Father, "No, you've been hinting. Just tell me, do we need it or not?" Agent, deeply uncomfortable with being direct, I couldn't say you need it, but I'd certainly recommend considering it." Father bought the insurance, but only because his wife intervened. Afterward, he complained to my sister, who was waiting nearby, that British customer service was passive-aggressive. She explained that the agent had been strongly recommending it the whole time. Father looked genuinely shocked, said the agent had seemed neutral, almost discouraging. That's the core of it. Really, British people communicate in layers. We hint, suggest, imply, understate. We're ironic by default, indirect by preference, certain about nothing. Americans communicate in straight lines. They say what they mean what they say, expect the same in return. When these systems collide, nobody's wrong. The British agent was being helpful in British. The American father was being reasonable in American. They just couldn't hear each other through the accent. I've learned to code switch. Now, with British guests, I'm properly British. The restaurant's not bad. Weather's quite pleasant. I'll see what I can manage. With Americans, I translate myself into their language. The restaurant's excellent. Beautiful day. I'll get that sorted for you right away. It feels like wearing two different costumes, but it works. The communication gap isn't about intelligence or culture being better or worse. It's about two countries that split apart centuries, ago and evolved different dialects of politeness. We kept the understatement and irony. They developed directness and enthusiasm. Both work perfectly, well within their own contexts. But at hotel desks and train stations and rental car counters across Britain, these systems meet and create chaos. And these stories, they never stop coming. Last week, an American guest asked if our Wi-Fi was reliable. I said, "It's not the worst." She used her phone data the entire stay. The Wi-Fi is actually excellent. I'm still learning to translate.